How did my mother-in-law's favorite threat become her worst nightmare? My mother-in-law, Donna, moved in with us after she sold her house, claiming she needed time to find a new place, but immediately started using the same threat every time she didn't get her way. "If you don't like how I do things, I'll just leave," she'd say, knowing we'd panic because she watched our kids while we worked. She figured out this weapon on day 3 when I asked her not to rearrange my kitchen, and she grabbed her suitcase saying, "I guess I'm not welcome here." My husband Carl begged her to stay, and she smirked, knowing she'd found her power move. From then on, everything became a hostage situation. When I asked her not to give the kids candy before dinner, she'd say, "Maybe I should just go stay with your brother." When Carl mentioned she'd used all the hot water, she'd start packing dramatically. I know when I'm not wanted. We'd always cave because we needed her help with childcare, and she knew it. She started getting bolder with her demands. She wanted the master bedroom because her back hurt. "Give me the room or I'm leaving tomorrow." We moved into the small guest room. She wanted to control the grocery shopping because she didn't like my cooking. "Let me handle the food or I'll find somewhere else to live." I watched her buy nothing but processed meals while my kids ate garbage. She'd invite her friends over without asking, and when we said we needed quiet for work, she'd call her sister loudly saying, "I'm looking for a place to stay, they don't want me here." The sister would call Carl and guilt him about his poor mother being homeless. She redecorated our entire living room with her tacky furniture, putting our stuff in storage. When I protested, she was already on the phone with moving companies. "Yes, I need to ship my things to Florida. I'm not welcome here anymore." Carl would panic and tell me to just let her have her way. 2 years this went on. 2 years of being held hostage in our own home by someone who contributed nothing but demanded everything. She didn't pay rent, didn't buy groceries, didn't even clean up after herself. But somehow we were supposed to be grateful she graced us with her presence. She'd tell everyone we begged her to stay, and she was doing us this huge favor. The breaking point came when she decided my daughter Megan couldn't go to her friend's birthday party because she didn't approve of the family. They were wonderful people, but Donna thought they were beneath us. Megan was crying and I said she was going to the party. Donna stood up and announced, "That's it, I'm done being disrespected. I'm leaving first thing tomorrow morning." She expected me to panic and apologize like always. Instead, I said, "Okay, I'll help you pack." Her face went white. "What?" she said. "You're leaving tomorrow morning, right? Let's get you packed." I went to her room and started putting her clothes in suitcases. Carl came home to find me loading boxes, and Donna following me around saying she didn't mean right away. "No, you said first thing tomorrow. We should respect your decision." I called her sister Beth. "Donna's moving in with you tomorrow. She says we don't respect her, so she's leaving." Beth was confused. "She can't stay here, I don't have room." I put it on speaker so Donna could hear. "Well, she's leaving our house tomorrow morning, so someone needs to take her." Donna tried to backtrack. "I just meant I needed space." But I kept packing. I called Carl's brother. "Donna's moving out tomorrow, can she stay with you?" He laughed. "Absolutely not. She lived with us for 6 months and nearly destroyed our marriage." Donna was getting desperate. "I'll stay a little longer until I find something." I pulled out my laptop. "Here's a lovely extended stay hotel nearby. I'll book you a week." She watched me enter my credit card information and actually complete the booking. "Check-in is at noon tomorrow." I kept packing methodically. Her friends started texting her because Beth had called them trying to find Donna a place to stay. Turns out Donna had lived with 3 different friends over the past 5 years and burned every bridge with the same threatening behavior. Her friend Rose texted, "Do not bring her here." She threatened to leave my house every day for 8 months until I finally threw her out. Another friend, Joan, wrote, "She did the same thing to me. Let her leave. It's the only way." Donna sat on the bed watching her entire manipulation network crumble. She couldn't use her threat anymore because I'd called her bluff. That night, she tried everything. She cried about being an old woman with nowhere to go. She promised to be better. She accused me of elder abuse. She called Carl weak for not standing up to me. Nothing worked. I just kept packing. The next morning, I loaded her car while neighbors watched. As Donna's car pulled out of the driveway, my phone buzzed with a call from the police. They were coming to the house to take a report about elder abuse that Donna had already filed against me before she left, complete with fabricated medical documentation, and the police had already called about before she even left the house. Requested Reds is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. I stood in my kitchen trying to process that. While Donna was dramatically packing last night, she'd been secretly filing false reports against me, and the officer on the phone sounded professional but serious when she said they needed to investigate these claims immediately. I gave her our address and she said someone would arrive within the hour, and I texted Carl that he needed to come home right now because his mother had filed elder abuse charges against me. He called back within 30 seconds asking what I was talking about, and I explained that Donna had apparently planned this revenge before she drove away, complete with fake medical papers claiming I'd hurt her. Carl said he was leaving work immediately and would be there in 20 minutes, and I spent those 20 minutes gathering every piece of evidence I could find that showed the truth about Donna's time in our house. I pulled up the hotel booking confirmation on my laptop, found the texts from Rose and her other friends warning about her manipulation, took photos of the empty master bedroom that she'd demanded from us, and made a list of every time she'd threatened to leave over the past 2 years. Officer Medina arrived exactly when she said she would, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes but a notebook ready to document everything, and I invited her inside immediately because I had nothing to hide. She asked if I was comfortable talking, and I said yes, explaining that my mother-in-law had just moved out this morning after living with us for 2 years. And she was apparently retaliating because I'd finally called her bluff when she threatened to leave. I showed Officer Medina the hotel confirmation with today's date and checkout time at noon, and she wrote that down carefully before asking about the medical documentation Donna had submitted. I had no idea what medical documents Donna could have fabricated since she was perfectly healthy, and had never needed my help with medications or physical care. But Officer Medina explained that the complaint claimed I'd been withholding Donna's heart medication and forcing her to do heavy cleaning that aggravated her back condition. I actually laughed because Donna hadn't cleaned a single thing in 2 years, and I'd never even seen her take heart medication. And Officer Medina's expression shifted slightly, like she was starting to see the real picture here. Carl arrived while we were talking, and I could see the panic on his face when he saw the police car in our driveway. But Officer Medina was calm and professional as she explained she needed to ask us both some questions separately. She interviewed Carl in the kitchen while I waited in the living room, and I could hear his voice getting louder as he explained his mother's pattern of threats and manipulation. When Officer Medina came back to talk to me, she asked very specific questions about whether I'd ever prevented Donna from leaving the house or taking her medications. And I answered honestly that Donna came and went as she pleased, and I'd actually begged her to stay multiple times when she threatened to leave. I showed her the text between me and Beth where I'd tried to find Donna somewhere to go, and the messages from Carl's brother saying he absolutely wouldn't take her in after she'd nearly destroyed his marriage. Officer Medina asked to see where Donna had been sleeping, and I took her to the master bedroom, explaining that Donna had demanded this room, and we'd moved into the small guest room to accommodate her. She looked at the empty room with Donna's furniture gone, and our stuff still in boxes in the hallway, and she made notes about how this didn't match a situation where someone was abused or controlled. Carl finished his interview and came to find me, and I could see he was shaking with anger that his mother would actually try to get me arrested. Officer Medina said she'd seen enough to know this didn't look like an elder abuse situation, but Adult Protective Services would still need to investigate since a formal complaint had been filed. She gave me a card with a case number and said someone from APS would contact me within a few days, and she also noted that filing a false police report was itself a crime if that's what this turned out to be. After she left, Carl and I just sat on the couch in silence for a while, both of us trying to process that his mother had actually done this. Carl kept saying he couldn't believe she'd go this far, but I reminded him that she'd shown us exactly who she was for 2 years, and we just hadn't wanted to see it. That night, I couldn't sleep because I kept thinking about what other lies Donna might have included in her complaint, and I decided I needed to talk to a lawyer before APS showed up. My friend had used a family lawyer named Eric for her divorce and said he was excellent, so I called his office first thing the next morning and explained the situation. The receptionist said Eric had an opening that afternoon if I could come in, and I took it immediately because I needed to understand what I was facing legally. Carl took off work to come with me, and we sat in Eric's office while I laid out everything that had happened over the past 2 years. Eric listened carefully and took notes, asking specific questions about the timeline and whether we had any documentation of Donna's threats and behavior. I showed him everything I'd gathered, including the texts, the hotel booking, and the statements from Donna's friends about her manipulation patterns. Eric reviewed the police report that Officer Medina had filed, and his eyebrows went up when he read about the fabricated medical documents Donna had submitted. He explained that creating false medical records was actually a serious crime, and the fact that Donna had filed the complaint before she even left our house proved this was retaliation, rather than genuine concern for her safety. I felt some relief hearing that, but Eric warned me that APS investigations could be invasive and stressful, even when the claims were false, and I should prepare for them to interview neighbors and possibly even talk to my kids. He asked if I'd considered getting a restraining order, and I admitted I hadn't thought that far ahead. But Eric said given Donna's pattern of harassment and now false accusations, it might be necessary to protect our family. The idea of legally banning Carl's mother from our home felt extreme and terrifying, but Eric walked us through what that would involve and why it might be the right choice. Carl surprised me by agreeing immediately, saying his mother had crossed a line he never thought she'd cross, and he didn't trust what she might do next. We left Eric's office with a plan to file for the restraining order as soon as the APS investigation closed, and I felt like we were finally taking control instead of just reacting to Donna's manipulation. The next week, Carl and I toured 3 different daycare centers before we found Little Sprouts Learning Center on the east side of town. The director showed us around, and I watched how the teachers interacted with the kids, looking for any sign of the manipulation tactics Donna had used. Instead, I saw trained professionals who redirected behavior calmly and explained things to the children at their level without threats or guilt trips. Megan and Mackenzie came with us for the trial day, and within an hour, Megan was playing blocks with 2 other girls her age, while Mackenzie painted at an easel without anyone hovering over her criticizing her technique. The first week cost $800, which was way more than we'd budgeted for, but watching my kids actually excited to go somewhere in the morning made every dollar worth it. They came home talking about their teachers and the activities instead of reporting what Grandma said they did wrong or what rules Grandma made up that day. 2 days after the kids started daycare, I opened my work email and found a message from an address I didn't recognize with the subject line, "What you've done to this family." I almost deleted it as spam, but something made me open it, and there was a 3-page rant from Donna about how I poisoned Carl against her and destroyed their relationship. She wrote that I was jealous of her bond with her son and couldn't stand that he loved his mother more than me. She said I manipulated him into throwing her out, and now she was alone with nowhere to go because of my cruelty. The email went on and on about how she sacrificed everything to help us with childcare, and this was how we repaid her kindness. I forwarded it to Eric immediately without even finishing reading it because my hands were shaking too much. He called me within 20 minutes and told me this was perfect evidence of ongoing harassment that would strengthen our restraining order case. He said to save any future emails but not respond to them because engagement was what she wanted, and silence would drive her crazy. Beth called me that afternoon and said she'd been thinking about the restraining order hearing and wanted to help. She asked if I needed anyone to testify about Donna's history, and I told her that would be incredible if she was willing. She said she'd write up a statement about the 8 months Donna lived with her family, and the same exact manipulation patterns she used. 2 hours later, my email dinged with a 10-page document from Beth detailing how Donna moved in, claiming she just needed a few weeks after a breakup, but immediately started using threats to control their household. Beth wrote about how Donna took over their guest room and refused to look for her own place, then started demanding they rearrange their schedules around her needs. She described the same "I'll just leave" threat every time Beth tried to set any boundary, and how her husband nearly divorced her because the stress of managing Donna was destroying their marriage. Reading Beth's statement made me cry because it was like reading my own experience written by someone else. The same threats, the same manipulation tactics, the same guilt trips about being unwanted and unloved. Beth wrote that she finally threw Donna out after Donna called the police claiming Beth was stealing from her, which turned out to be completely false but caused Beth months of stress dealing with the investigation. Jeremy also agreed to testify and sent his own statement about the 6 months Donna lived with him and his wife, describing how she nearly destroyed their marriage with constant manipulation and boundary violations. The week before the hearing, Donna's friends started calling Carl's phone trying to guilt him into dropping the restraining order. His phone rang at dinner, and it was someone named Grace who said she'd known Donna for 30 years and couldn't believe Carl would do this to his own mother. Carl put the phone on speaker so I could hear and calmly explained that his mother filed false abuse charges and harassed us repeatedly after we helped her move out. Grace tried to argue that Donna was just hurt and scared, but Carl told her the facts of what happened and said he needed to protect his family. She hung up angry, but Carl handled it without caving to the pressure. Another friend called the next day with the same guilt trip, and Carl gave the same calm explanation of the timeline and evidence. I watched him stand firm against people who'd known him since childhood, and felt proud of how much he'd grown in just these few weeks. That night after the kids went to bed, Carl told me he'd been seeing a therapist for the past 2 weeks. He said he found someone who specialized in family dynamics and manipulation, and had been working through his childhood conditioning. His therapist helped him understand that his mother trained him from a young age to always prioritize her feelings over his own needs, and that protecting our children from her manipulation was actually the most loving thing he could do. Carl said he'd spent his whole life being terrified of his mother's disapproval, and it was like breaking an addiction to finally choose his own family first. He cried while he told me this, and I held him while he processed decades of guilt and obligation that his mother had weaponized against him. Eric called 3 days before the hearing to tell us Donna had filed a counterclaim. She was demanding we pay her $60,000 for the 2 years of childcare she provided, claiming we owed her $30 per hour for watching the kids. Eric actually laughed when he read it to me because Donna was essentially admitting she was compensated with free housing, utilities, food, and living expenses for 2 years. He said this completely undermined her abuse claims because she was acknowledging she received substantial value for her childcare instead of being exploited. The counterclaim would actually help our case because it showed Donna's real motivation was financial and retaliatory rather than genuine concern about abuse. The morning of the hearing, I put on the navy dress I'd bought for job interviews, and Carl wore his good suit. We met Eric outside the courthouse at 8:30, and he reviewed the evidence one more time. He had 3 binders organized with tabs for the hotel booking, the text messages from Donna's friends, Beth and Jeremy's statements, the APS investigation results, and Donna's harassing emails. We walked into the courtroom, and Donna was already sitting at the other table with a lawyer who looked about 25 years old. She was wearing a black dress and had her hair done like she was going to a funeral, playing up the grieving mother angle. Her lawyer kept glancing at our evidence binders, and I could see him getting nervous as Eric laid out document after document. The judge came in and we all stood. Then she told us to sit and explain why we were seeking the restraining order. Eric presented our case methodically, starting with the 2-year timeline of Donna living with us and using threats to manipulate our household. He showed the judge examples of Donna's escalating demands and how she weaponized the threat of leaving to control everything from our bedroom to our food to our children's activities. The judge listened carefully and took notes while Eric walked through the evidence. Then Eric presented the evidence of Donna pre-filing the abuse complaint before she even left our house, which proved it was retaliation rather than genuine concern. Donna's lawyer tried to object, but the judge told him she wanted to hear the full presentation before arguments. Eric showed the texts from Donna's friends warning us about her manipulation patterns and confirming she'd used the same tactics in their homes. He presented the APS investigation results showing no evidence of abuse or neglect. Then he presented Donna's harassing emails and her counterclaim demanding payment for childcare as evidence of ongoing harassment and financial motivation. Beth took the stand and the judge swore her in. She testified about the 8 months Donna lived with her family and the identical manipulation patterns. Beth described how Donna used the threat of leaving every single day to control their household decisions, and how she refused to look for her own place despite claiming she was desperate to leave. The judge asked Beth pointed questions about whether Donna had a history of making false claims when she didn't get her way. Beth explained that Donna filed a false police report claiming Beth was stealing from her when Beth finally set boundaries and forced her to move out. The judge wrote this down and asked if the police investigated those claims. Beth said yes, and the investigation found no evidence of theft, but it cost her thousands in legal fees and months of stress. The judge asked if Donna ever apologized for the false accusations, and Beth said no. Donna just moved on to the next family member who would take her in. Jeremy testified next about the 6 months Donna lived with him and his wife. He described how his mother used threats to control every aspect of their household, from what they ate to when they could have friends over to how they spent their money. Jeremy's voice cracked when he talked about how his wife almost left him because the stress of managing his mother's manipulation was destroying their marriage. He said his mother would threaten to leave if they didn't do exactly what she wanted, but then refused to actually look for her own place. The judge asked if his mother ever contributed financially during those 6 months, and Jeremy said no. She claimed she couldn't afford rent, but somehow had money for shopping and her hair appointments. His wife had submitted a written statement that Eric handed to the judge describing the psychological toll of living under constant threat of abandonment. The judge read it carefully, and I could see her expression shift from neutral to concerned as she absorbed the pattern across multiple family members. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand and the judge swore me in. My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice steady as I explained the 2 years of escalating demands and threats. I focused on specific examples like how Donna demanded our master bedroom, and we moved into the guest room to avoid her leaving. I described how she controlled our grocery shopping and fed our kids processed food while claiming my cooking wasn't good enough. I explained how she redecorated our entire living room with her furniture and put our belongings in storage, threatening to leave if we protested. The judge asked me directly if I ever prevented Donna from leaving, and I answered honestly that I begged her to stay multiple times because we were terrified of losing our childcare and having her turn the family against us. I told the judge about the breaking point with Megan's birthday party and how I finally called Donna's bluff by helping her pack. The judge asked what happened next, and I described finding out about the pre-filed abuse complaint and the fabricated medical documentation. She asked if I had any idea why Donna would file false charges, and I said because I stopped letting her manipulate us, and she wanted revenge. Eric stood and addressed the judge, pointing to the timeline in his documents showing Donna filed her complaint 2 days before she left our house. The judge's expression shifted as she examined the dates, then looked at Donna's lawyer with raised eyebrows. Donna's lawyer tried to argue that his client was planning ahead because she feared retaliation, but Eric interrupted with the hotel booking confirmation showing I paid for Donna's room myself. The judge asked Donna's lawyer directly how filing false abuse charges before leaving showed genuine fear rather than planned revenge, and he stumbled through an answer about protective measures that made no sense. The courtroom was silent as the judge made notes, and I could see Donna shifting in her seat, realizing her timeline didn't support her story at all. The judge called Donna to the stand and she walked up slowly, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She started crying immediately about being thrown out with nowhere to go, describing how cruel I was and how she had no family support. The judge let her talk for a few minutes, then asked her specific questions about the abuse allegations in her medical documents. Donna said I withheld her heart medication for 3 days, but the judge asked which medication and Donna couldn't name it. The judge asked about the excessive physical labor claim, and Donna said I made her clean the entire house daily. But then the judge asked why the police report from the home visit described the house as messy if she was forced to clean it constantly. Donna's face went red and she changed her story, saying she meant I made her cook elaborate meals, but the judge pointed out that her original complaint said I wouldn't let her in the kitchen. Each answer contradicted something else she'd claimed, and I watched her lawyer put his head in his hands as his client destroyed her own credibility. The judge asked about the fabricated medical documents showing injuries from physical abuse, and Donna insisted they were real. But when the judge asked which doctor examined her, Donna said she couldn't remember the name or location of the office. The judge held up the medical documents and asked Donna directly who helped her create them, because they were clearly fake. Donna's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out, and the judge waited patiently for an answer that never came. The silence stretched for almost a minute before Donna finally said she didn't understand the question, which made the judge's expression harden. The judge explained slowly that filing false medical reports is a crime, and she was considering referring this case to the prosecutor's office for criminal charges. Donna started crying harder and said she just wanted her family back, completely abandoning her abuse story, and her lawyer requested a brief recess that the judge denied. The judge said Donna had wasted enough of the court's time with lies and manipulation, and she wanted to finish this hearing today. 3 hours after we started, the judge announced her decision. She granted our restraining order for 1 year, stating clearly that Donna had shown a pattern of manipulation and revenge across multiple family members. The judge said Donna's pre-filed complaint proved she planned retaliation before leaving. Her contradictory testimony showed she was lying about abuse, and the fabricated medical documents demonstrated she was willing to commit crimes to punish us for setting boundaries. The order required Donna to stay at least 500 feet from our home and have no contact with us except through lawyers. Carl grabbed my hand so tight it hurt, and I could feel him shaking next to me as the judge read the terms. Donna jumped up from her seat and started screaming that we'd regret this, and she'd make sure everyone knew what terrible people we were. Her lawyer tried to pull her back down, but she kept yelling about how ungrateful Carl was, and how I'd poisoned him against her. The judge banged her gavel 3 times and threatened Donna with contempt of court, warning that any violation of the restraining order would result in immediate arrest. The bailiff moved closer to Donna and she finally sat down, but I could see her glaring at us with pure hate. The judge added that given Donna's outburst, she was also ordering a mental health evaluation before any future contact with the grandchildren could be considered, which made Donna start crying again, but quietly this time. We walked out of the courthouse into bright sunlight and Carl completely broke down on the steps. He sat down hard and put his face in his hands, sobbing so hard his whole body shook. I sat next to him and put my arm around his shoulders while he cried, not caring that people were walking past and staring. He kept saying he was scared the judge wouldn't believe us and we'd be stuck dealing with his mother forever, but now we had legal protection and proof we weren't crazy. I told him we'd won because we had truth on our side, and he nodded but couldn't stop crying. Beth came over and hugged both of us, telling Carl he did the right thing protecting his family, and Jeremy stood nearby looking relieved but sad. We sat there for 20 minutes while Carl processed everything, and I realized this was the first time in 2 years he'd felt safe enough to actually feel his emotions, instead of managing his mother's threats. That night, we tackled the master bedroom, moving our furniture back from storage piece by piece. Carl carried the dresser while I directed where it should go, and we both felt lighter with each item we returned to its proper place. Donna's tacky decorations went into boxes for donation, her frilly curtains came down, and our simple blinds went back up, and we stripped her floral bedding and put on our own sheets. The room smelled like her perfume, so I opened all the windows and lit candles, trying to erase 2 years of feeling like guests in our own bedroom. We found things she'd hidden in drawers, personal items she'd stashed in our closet, and Carl threw them all in a garbage bag without looking through them. By midnight, the room was ours again, and we climbed into our own bed in our own room for the first time since Donna moved in. Carl fell asleep within minutes, his breathing deep and steady in a way I hadn't heard in months, and I lay there feeling the weight of constant stress finally lifting from my chest. A week later, my phone rang while I was at work, and it was Mackenzie's school saying Donna had shown up trying to pick her up. My heart stopped, and I told them to keep Mackenzie inside and call the police immediately. Then I called Carl and Eric while running to my car. The school principal stayed on the phone with me while I drove, explaining that Donna had come to the office claiming there was a family emergency, and she needed to take Mackenzie home. The secretary asked for identification, and Donna got angry, demanding to see her grandchild. And that's when the principal checked our emergency contacts and saw the note about the restraining order. They kept Donna in the office while security watched Mackenzie's classroom, and I could hear Donna yelling in the background about her rights as a grandmother. I got to the school at the same time as the police, and Officer Medina was there again, which felt like some kind of cosmic joke. She arrested Donna for violating a court order while Donna screamed that she just wanted to see her grandchild, and we were keeping her away unfairly. They put handcuffs on her and walked her to the police car, and I watched from the school entrance as my mother-in-law spent her first night in jail. Eric filed a motion the next morning to extend the restraining order to 2 years based on the violation. Donna's lawyer tried to argue she just wanted to see her grandchildren and didn't understand the restrictions, but the judge looked at the school's statement showing Donna was told about the restraining order and became aggressive. The judge pointed out that Donna was forbidden from all contact and chose to violate the order within 1 week, showing she had no respect for court authority or boundaries. The extension was granted immediately, and Eric said if Donna violated again, she'd face criminal charges beyond just contempt. Carl's extended family started calling within days, and the reaction split right down the middle. His aunt said we were too harsh, and Donna was just a lonely old woman who made mistakes, and I heard Carl tell her that lonely people don't file false police reports and show up at schools. His cousin shared her own story about Donna living with her family for 4 months and using the same threat patterns until they couldn't take it anymore. Carl's uncle said he wished he'd been brave enough to get a restraining order years ago when Donna lived with him and made his life miserable. We got texts and calls for weeks, some supportive and some critical, and Carl made a decision I was proud of. He told his aunt and uncle who defended Donna that we needed space from people who enabled her behavior, and we'd focus on relationships with family members who supported healthy boundaries. It cost him some relationships but gained him peace, and I watched him become stronger with each conversation where he chose our family over his mother's manipulation. I found Megan sitting on her bed that evening, holding a photo of her and Donna from 2 years ago, when things were still mostly okay. She looked up at me with those big eyes and asked if she'd ever see Grandma again. Carl sat down next to her and I took her other side and we told her the truth in words a kid could understand. Grandma made choices that weren't safe for our family. She used threats to get her way instead of talking about problems like grown-ups should. We explained that maybe someday when Grandma learns to respect boundaries and treat people kindly, but right now we need to protect our family from that behavior. Megan nodded slowly and asked if it was because Grandma kept saying she'd leave all the time. Carl looked surprised that she'd noticed, and I realized our kids had been watching this whole mess unfold, even when we thought we were hiding it. Megan said it made her feel scared when Grandma would start packing her bags over little things, like she was always about to disappear. We hugged her and promised that our family was stable now, that nobody was threatening to leave anymore. She seemed to understand in that way kids do when they've been living with tension for so long that relief feels obvious. Mackenzie wandered in and asked what we were talking about, and Megan explained it to her little sister in her own words. Grandma needed to learn to be nicer before she could visit again. Mackenzie just shrugged and said she liked it better now anyway because the house felt calmer, which broke my heart and validated our decision at the same time. 3 months after the restraining order, Eric called to say Donna's lawyer had sent a letter requesting supervised visitation with the grandchildren. He read it to me over the phone and it was full of language about grandparents' rights and family relationships. But Eric said we were under no legal obligation to agree to anything. Carl and I talked about it that night after the kids went to bed. Part of him wanted to give his mother a chance because guilt is a powerful thing, but I reminded him about Megan's question and Mackenzie's relief. We weren't ready to expose our kids to Donna's manipulation again, supervised or not. The restraining order existed for a reason, and just because Donna was using her lawyer instead of showing up at schools didn't mean she'd changed. Carl agreed, and we told Eric to respond that we weren't interested in visitation at this time. Eric said he'd handle it professionally, and that was that. Eric helped us draft a response through his office that laid out exactly what we needed from Donna before we'd even consider letting her near our children again. She needed to complete therapy with a licensed professional who specialized in family dynamics and manipulation patterns. She needed to demonstrate genuine behavior change over a sustained period, not just promises and tears. She needed to respect our parenting decisions without threatening to leave or trying to undermine us. And none of this would happen before the restraining order expired naturally. We weren't going to reward her lawyer's letter by giving in early. Eric sent the response and we waited. 2 weeks later, he forwarded us Donna's lawyer's reply. She refused therapy because she didn't do anything wrong. She said our conditions were insulting, and she was the victim in all of this. She claimed we were keeping her grandchildren from her unfairly, and she wouldn't jump through hoops to see her own family. Eric said the response proved exactly why we made the right choice. Someone who refuses to acknowledge their behavior and get help isn't ready to be around kids who need healthy relationship models. We filed the letter away as evidence in case we needed to renew the restraining order later. Carl kept going to his therapy appointments every week, and I watched him get stronger each time. His therapist was helping him work through the guilt conditioning his mother had installed since childhood, teaching him that protecting his children wasn't betraying his mother. One afternoon, his aunt called and started in with the usual guilt trip about how Donna was his mother and family should forgive. I heard Carl take a deep breath, and then he said something that made me stop washing dishes to listen. He told his aunt that he loved his mother, but he wouldn't sacrifice his children's well-being to manage her feelings. He said his kids deserved to grow up without manipulation and threats hanging over their heads. His aunt tried to argue, but Carl stayed calm and firm, explaining that enabling Donna's behavior for decades was exactly why she never learned to treat people with respect. He said he was breaking that cycle, and if his aunt couldn't support healthy boundaries, then they needed space from each other too. He hung up and looked at me with this expression of pride mixed with sadness. I told him I'd never been more proud of his growth, and he said it felt scary, but right. 6 months after Donna left, our lives had completely transformed. The kids were thriving at Little Sprouts Learning Center, coming home every day with artwork and stories about their friends. Our finances had adjusted to the childcare costs after some tight months, and we'd cut back on eating out and unnecessary expenses. But the trade-off was worth every penny because our home felt peaceful in a way it hadn't in 2 years. We could make decisions about dinner or bedtime or weekend plans without calculating whether it would trigger Donna's threats. We reclaimed our master bedroom fully, painting over the marks from where Donna had hung her pictures, and replacing the curtains she'd chosen with ones we actually liked. The living room had our furniture again, arranged the way we wanted it. The kitchen stayed organized how I preferred without someone rearranging it as a power move. Megan was doing better in the school now that she wasn't stressed about Grandma's drama at home. Mackenzie had started sleeping through the night again. Carl and I were actually talking and laughing instead of walking on eggshells. The constant threat of Donna's manipulation wasn't hanging over every single decision we made anymore. Beth and I had started talking on the phone regularly, bonding over our shared experiences with Donna in ways that felt healing for both of us. She told me about the 8 months Donna lived with her family and used the exact same threat patterns, how it nearly destroyed her marriage and made her kids anxious. She said she wished she'd been brave enough to get a restraining order years ago instead of just throwing Donna out and dealing with 2 years of guilt trips afterward. I told her that watching her set boundaries with Donna during that phone call when I was packing gave me the courage to do the same. Beth had refused to take Donna in, and that validation from family meant everything in that moment. We compared notes on Donna's manipulation tactics like survivors of the same disaster, and it felt good to be understood by someone who'd lived through it. Beth sent me articles about narcissistic family dynamics, and we'd discuss them like we were studying for a test we'd already passed. She became a real friend instead of just Carl's aunt, and that was an unexpected gift from this whole mess. Beth called me one morning about 2 months later with news that didn't surprise either of us. Donna had moved to Florida to live near her friend Rose, the same Rose who'd texted warnings about Donna's behavior when I was packing her up. Beth said Rose had called her saying Donna was already using the same threat tactics. Apparently, Donna had been staying with Rose for 6 weeks and had already threatened to leave 3 times when Rose didn't do exactly what she wanted. Rose was at her breaking point and didn't know what to do. Beth warned Rose about the pattern based on everything we'd documented, explaining how Donna would escalate until Rose either gave in completely or threw her out. Beth offered to share our legal documents if Rose needed to protect herself, paying forward the support we'd received from Beth's honesty. Rose thanked her and said she'd already started looking into how to legally evict someone in Florida. I felt bad for Rose, but also validated that this wasn't personal to us. Donna did this to everyone. It was her pattern, her choice, her refusal to change. And now she was burning bridges in a whole new state. The restraining order came up for review at the 1-year mark, and we had to appear before the judge to decide whether to extend it or let it expire. Carl and I discussed it carefully over several nights, weighing the pros and cons. Part of us wanted to keep the protection in place because Donna had already violated it once. But another part of us felt like we'd made our point, and Donna had stayed away except through her lawyer. We decided to let it expire, but made clear to the judge that we'd immediately refile if Donna contacted us inappropriately or showed up uninvited anywhere. The judge noted our position in the record and said the order would expire as scheduled, but our documentation would remain on file for quick action if needed. We were giving Donna one chance to respect our boundaries voluntarily, instead of because a court forced her to. Eric thought it was risky but understood our reasoning. We wanted to see if Donna could control herself without legal consequences hanging over her head. 2 weeks after the restraining order expired, Eric forwarded us an email from Donna's lawyer. She wanted to rebuild the relationship and was asking what steps we needed from her. The email was brief and formal, but it was the first communication that didn't include threats or guilt trips. Eric helped us draft a response that outlined our expectations clearly. Donna needed to complete at least 6 months of therapy with a licensed family therapist and provide documentation of attendance and progress. She needed to respect our parenting decisions without criticism or attempts to undermine us. She needed to never use threats of leaving or abandonment as manipulation tactics. She needed to acknowledge the harm her behavior caused instead of playing the victim. And she needed to demonstrate these changes consistently over time, not just promise them in a letter. We sent the response and waited to see if she was serious about change or if this was just another manipulation attempt. Donna's response came back within 3 days, and it was exactly what we expected, but still disappointing. Her lawyer wrote that our conditions were unreasonable and insulting. Donna said she wouldn't jump through hoops to see her own grandchildren. She claimed she'd done nothing wrong, and we were the ones who needed to apologize for how we treated her. She said therapy was for people with problems, and she wasn't going to pretend she had problems just to satisfy our demands. The email ended with a veiled threat about grandparents' rights and how she had legal options if we continued to keep her from her family. We didn't respond. Eric filed the email as evidence in case we needed to renew the restraining order, creating a paper trail of Donna's refusal to change or take responsibility. We weren't surprised by her response, but it still hurt Carl to see his mother choose her pride over a relationship with her grandchildren. He said it made the decision easier, though, knowing she'd rather be right than be in their lives. Looking back now, I can see how those months after the restraining order expired became about Carl finding his own peace with everything. He stopped checking his phone every time it buzzed, hoping it might be his mother finally understanding what she'd done. He stopped explaining to people why we had to cut her off. One night, while putting Megan to bed, she asked if he missed his mom, and he sat on the edge of her bed for a long time before answering. He told her that he tried to help his grandmother change, but she has to want it for herself. And sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is let them figure out their own life. He started focusing all his energy on being present with our kids, making sure they understood that love shouldn't come with threats or conditions. He'd take them to the park and actually play with them instead of sitting on his phone worrying about his mother. He coached Mackenzie's soccer team and never missed one of Megan's piano recitals. He was breaking a cycle that had run through his family for who knows how many generations, and I watched him become lighter without that weight on his shoulders. A year and a half after Donna left, my phone rang from a Florida number I didn't recognize. It was Rose calling to tell me that Donna had some kind of minor health scare. Nothing serious, but she'd been asking for Carl. Rose sounded tired and said Donna was fine, but kept saying she needed to talk to her son. I handed the phone to Carl and watched his face go through about 5 different emotions before he agreed to one call with clear boundaries. He dialed Donna's number and put it on speaker so I could hear. The first thing out of her mouth was how she almost died and none of her children even cared enough to check on her. Carl stayed calm and asked what actually happened. She'd had some chest pain that turned out to be heartburn, but she went on and on about how scared she was and how alone she felt. Then came the guilt trip about how he abandoned her when she needed him most, how she raised him better than this. How could he leave his own mother to suffer by herself? Carl listened for maybe 3 minutes before he said he was glad she was okay, but he had to go. She started raising her voice, saying he couldn't just hang up on her like this, but he ended the call and blocked her number. His hands were shaking a little, but he looked relieved instead of guilty. 2 years after Donna moved out, we decided to celebrate by doing something we never could have done when she lived with us. We took the kids on a beach vacation to the Outer Banks, staying in a little rental house right on the water. The whole trip cost less than what we would have spent feeding Donna for 3 months. Megan and Mackenzie ran around on the sand and built castles and collected shells like normal happy kids. We ate ice cream for breakfast one day just because we could. Carl taught them both how to body surf, and I watched him laugh harder than I'd heard in years. One evening, while the kids were hunting for crabs, Carl mentioned that they barely talk about their grandmother anymore. Megan had asked about her maybe twice in the past 6 months, and Mackenzie seemed to have mostly forgotten about her. It felt both sad and healthy at the same time. Sad because kids shouldn't have to lose their grandmother, but healthy because they weren't growing up around someone who taught them that love meant manipulation. About a month after we got back from vacation, Jeremy called Carl sounding stressed. Donna had apparently contacted him asking if she could move in again, saying Florida wasn't working out and she needed family. Jeremy told us he said no immediately and gave her information about senior housing resources in the area. He said he was done enabling her pattern and she needed to figure out how to live on her own without using threats to control people. Carl's whole family seemed to finally be on the same page about not giving in to her anymore. Beth had stopped answering her calls entirely. Jeremy refused to let her stay even for a visit. The family was united in forcing Donna to deal with the consequences of burning every bridge she'd ever had. 3 months later, we got a letter in the mail from someone named Dr. Grace Baker. She introduced herself as Donna's therapist and said Donna wanted to rebuild her relationship with us. The letter asked if we'd be willing to participate in some family therapy sessions to work on reconciliation. I read it 3 times trying to figure out if this was another manipulation tactic. Carl and I talked about it for over a week, going back and forth about whether we should even consider it. Eric thought it could be a trap, but said if we decided to try it, we should set very strict ground rules. We finally agreed to try exactly 2 sessions with the understanding that we'd leave immediately if Donna started using her old manipulation tactics. I called Dr. Baker back and laid out our conditions. She had to respect that we'd walk out if Donna played the victim or refused to take responsibility. Dr. Baker said she understood and scheduled us for the following Tuesday. The therapy office was in a plain building near downtown, the kind of place that tried too hard to look calming with its beige walls and nature photos. Donna was already sitting in Dr. Baker's office when we arrived, and she looked older than I remembered. Thinner, too. The session started tense with nobody really knowing what to say. Dr. Baker did most of the talking at first, explaining how family patterns develop and how threats can damage relationships over time. Then she asked Donna to talk about why she used the leaving threat so often. Donna was quiet for a long time before she finally spoke. She said she was scared of being unwanted and alone, and threatening to leave gave her some control over when people would reject her. It was the first time I'd ever heard her admit that her behavior was about her own fears, instead of blaming everyone else. Dr. Baker asked her what she thought the threats actually created, and Donna said quietly that they probably pushed people away faster. Carl asked her why she filed the false abuse report, and Donna actually admitted she did it because she was angry and wanted to hurt me. The session ended with Dr. Baker saying this was good progress, but I left feeling cautiously hopeful at best. The second session the following week went completely differently. Donna started by saying she'd been thinking about everything, and she felt like we made her feel unwanted by not accepting how she did things. Dr. Baker tried to redirect her, but Donna kept talking over her, listing all the ways we'd been ungrateful and difficult. She said if we'd just let her be herself and stopped criticizing everything, none of this would have happened. Carl stayed calm and told her that her threats created the exact abandonment she was afraid of, and until she could take responsibility for her own actions instead of blaming us, nothing would change. Donna got defensive and said she shouldn't have to change who she is just to have a relationship with her grandchildren. I stood up and said we were leaving. Dr. Baker didn't try to stop us. Donna called after us that we were proving her point about not accepting her, but we walked out and drove home in silence. Dr. Baker called me 2 days later and apologized. She said Donna wasn't ready for genuine reconciliation and was still stuck in victim thinking. She'd made some progress in the first session, but couldn't maintain it when faced with actually taking responsibility. Dr. Baker said she'd continue working with Donna individually, but recommended we pause any contact until Donna demonstrated real sustained change through therapy, which might never happen. I thanked her for being honest instead of pushing us to keep trying for the sake of trying. Carl seemed relieved that a professional confirmed what we already knew. We decided to move forward with our lives and let Donna figure out her own path. 3 years after Donna moved out of our house, we were genuinely happy in a way we hadn't been in a long time. Our family felt stronger and healthier. Carl had built real relationships with his siblings based on mutual respect, instead of shared guilt about their mother. Jeremy and his wife came over for dinner regularly, and we actually enjoyed spending time together. Beth and I texted often, and she'd become like the mother figure I never had. The kids were growing up learning that love doesn't include manipulation or threats, that boundaries are healthy, that you don't have to accept bad treatment from family just because they're family. Megan was doing great in the school and had good friends whose parents we actually knew and liked. Mackenzie was confident and happy and never walked on eggshells anymore. Carl and I had reclaimed our master bedroom and our living room and our kitchen and our entire lives. We made decisions based on what was best for our family instead of managing someone else's emotions. The peace in our home was real and solid and worth every hard conversation and legal battle it took to get here. Right before Christmas that year, a card arrived in the mail with no return address. Inside was a simple message in Donna's handwriting saying she hoped we were well and she missed the kids. That was it. No guilt trips about being alone during the holidays, no threats or manipulation, no demands to see them or accusations about keeping them from her. Just a brief statement that felt almost like a real attempt at respecting boundaries. We didn't respond to the card, but I kept it in a drawer. Carl said maybe it meant she was starting to understand what we'd been trying to tell her all along. Maybe the therapy was actually helping. Or maybe she'd just run out of people to manipulate and was trying a different approach. Either way, we weren't ready to let her back in, but the card felt like the smallest possible sign that change might be happening somewhere in her, even if we'd never see the results. I started cooking Sunday dinners again, real meals with vegetables and protein instead of the processed garbage Donna used to buy. Megan helped me chop carrots while Mackenzie set the table with our good dishes, the ones we'd kept in storage for 2 years because Donna didn't like them. We established movie nights every Friday where the kids picked the film and we made popcorn on the stove, something Donna never allowed because she thought microwave popcorn was easier. The master bedroom became our space again, and I hung photos of our family on the walls instead of Donna's weird paintings of beaches she'd never visited. Carl built shelves in the living room for our books, replacing the dusty figurines Donna had displayed everywhere. The kitchen drawer organizers went back to my system, and I could find the potato peeler without searching through Donna's chaotic arrangement. We started having friends over for dinner parties, something we'd stopped doing because Donna would monopolize conversations and make people uncomfortable. Our house felt alive again instead of like a museum dedicated to keeping one person happy. The kids invited friends over after school and played in the living room without worrying about breaking Donna's rules about noise or mess. We planted a garden in the backyard, something Donna had refused to allow because she thought it looked trashy. Megan grew tomatoes and Mackenzie planted sunflowers, and they checked on them every morning before school. Carl sat with me on the porch one evening while the kids played in the yard, watching the sunset without anyone threatening to ruin the moment. He told me that standing up to his mother was harder than anything he'd faced in his life, scarier than changing careers or becoming a parent. But he said it saved our marriage because I was ready to leave if things didn't change, and he knew it even though I never said it out loud. He was proud that he broke the cycle his family had run on for generations, where everyone enabled Donna's behavior because confronting her seemed impossible. His brother called him last week to say thank you for showing him it was possible to set boundaries, that Jeremy felt free for the first time in his adult life. Carl's voice shook when he said he wished he'd done it sooner, before we lost 2 years of our lives to managing his mother's threats. But he was grateful we did it before our kids grew up thinking manipulation was normal, before Megan and Mackenzie learned that love meant walking on eggshells and sacrificing your own needs to keep someone else from leaving. Looking back at that morning when I helped Donna pack, I remembered how my hands shook while I folded her clothes. I was terrified she'd actually leave and we'd have no childcare, terrified Carl would resent me forever, terrified I was making a huge mistake. But I was more terrified of living another day in that hostage situation, watching my kids learn that threats were an acceptable way to get what you want. Her threat to leave only worked because we gave it power, because we acted like her leaving would destroy us instead of free us. The moment I said okay and started packing, her weapon disappeared and she had nothing left. She tried every manipulation tactic she knew that night, but none of them worked once we accepted that her leaving was actually the best outcome. Taking back control meant accepting the thing she'd been threatening us with for 2 years, and once we did that, we took back our entire lives. We make decisions now based on what's best for Megan and Mackenzie, not on managing someone else's emotions or avoiding threats. The kids are genuinely happy, laughing more and bringing home better grades because they're not stressed all the time. Carl and I talk through disagreements instead of avoiding them to prevent Donna from using them against us. We learned that protecting your peace sometimes means letting toxic people follow through on their threats, that calling a bluff is terrifying but necessary, and that the life you get back is worth every hard conversation and scary moment it takes to reclaim it.